My husband confessed to me after his second affair. Honestly, both of those women were just strippers I hired. Nothing happened between us. The only one I'm actually sleeping with is Chloe. Chloe was my best friend. I froze. It took me a long time to find my voice.
Why?
Why would you do this? He lit a cigarette and smiled. Chloe did it for your own good. She was worried you wouldn't be able to handle finding out about us. So we hired those girls to test you first. It was like exposure therapy to desensitize you. Since you were able to forgive me for those two strippers, you should be able to forgive her, too. The three of us can live together from now on. You'll still be Mrs. Vance. So, all those years of my suffering, the agony that drove me to slit my wrists, it was all just to pave a smooth path for Chloe. This time, I stopped fighting. After scheduling an abortion, I booked a one-way flight. Sebastian spoke of our future as if he was absolutely certain I wouldn't resist this time. Once we sign the official papers, she'll take wedding photos with us. She'll be at the ceremony, too. You know that wedding dress you liked? She likes it too. It's her first time wearing one, so just let her have it. As for the house, you'll move into the guest room. Chloe gets cold easily at night, and the master bedroom gets the best sunlight. It's warmer. And don't say anything to my friends. As far as they know, you and I broke up a long time ago, and I'm officially dating Chloe now. He rattled off these demands one by one, without even blinking, as if he were talking about the weather. Rage and logic tore at my mind, burning me alive from the inside out. But he just continued casually. Oh, by the way, Chloe is pregnant. Be gentle with her. She can't get stressed right now. If you're angry, take it out on me. Pregnant? They had been together for so long, and they only told me now because she was pregnant?
Fine.
He wanted me to take it out on him? I would. I slowly raised my hand. I wanted to slap him across the face, but he caught my wrist effortlessly. He frowned, looking genuinely confused. Are you actually mad? That doesn't make sense. Those two actresses did so many terrible things to you, and you are as quiet as a sheep. Why are you throwing such a fit now that it's Chloe? The terrible things you mentioned? One of them pushed me into a freezing lake in the dead of winter, causing me to miscarry. The other sent graphic, explicit photos of Sebastian to my parents, which gave my mother a fatal heart attack. They started rumors at my office that I was a homewrecker, getting me fired. And now, all of that was justified by his single sentence. It was all just exposure therapy to desensitize me, just to pave the way for Chloe. A wave of pure absurdity washed over me. I wanted to laugh, but tears spilled from my eyes instead. He sighed, leaning his face closer to me, presenting his cheek. Forget it. Chloe is your best friend, so it's natural you're a bit upset. Go ahead, hit me. But after you do, you need to be nice to her. She feels incredibly guilty. She was too terrified to tell you until she was sure you were completely desensitized to the situation. She did it for your own good, Summer. Don't scare her. I hadn't even done anything yet, and he was already worried I would scare her. They say when a man truly loves a woman, she will always seem fragile and young in his eyes, someone to be pampered and protected. That was why he called her a young girl, completely forgetting that I was actually 2 months younger than she was. Tears soaked my neck. I let my hand drop uselessly. Pull over, I whispered. We're done. I'm leaving. He paused for a second, then let out a helpless chuckle. Stop acting like a child. If you wanted to leave, you would have left years ago. You just want me to spoil you, don't you? Give me your phone. I'll buy everything in your Amazon cart right now. Tell me what else you want. I'll get it. He tried to coax me the way he always did, but I didn't care anymore. I stared straight ahead. I want my original wedding dress. That dress was custom-made for me by Sebastian. Back when he knelt in the dirt, begging me to take him back, he had said, "Wear this, and I'll give you the wedding of a lifetime. Please." And I had forgiven him back then only because I remembered the boy he used to be. The teenage Sebastian who would blush furiously whenever our eyes met. The boy who fought off local thugs for me, getting stabbed in the back, only to smile and say it didn't hurt at all. The boy who worked 3 part-time jobs just to put me through college. He had once slipped a plastic soda tab onto my ring finger and promised me the world. I remembered it perfectly, but he had long since forgotten. He sneered, leaning back into his seat, his voice turning cold and cruel. That's enough, Summer. You're not some 20-year-old girl anymore. Isn't this temper tantrum getting pathetic? We both know you'll forgive me in the end anyway. Why make a scene? Since you refuse to be reasonable about Chloe, you can walk home and cool your head. Like a piece of trash, I was pushed out of his car. Outside, the heavy rain poured down. The freezing water made me shiver, but it was nothing compared to the ice in my heart. I didn't even bother running for shelter. Right there in the rain, I pulled out my phone, scheduled an abortion, and booked a flight out of the city. When I got back to the house, I walked in to find Chloe curled up on the sofa, eating potato chips. Sebastian, a notorious neat freak, was on his knees, picking up her dropped crumbs without a single word of complaint. I pretended they didn't exist. Holding back my tears, I walked toward my bedroom. But when I opened the door, all my belongings were gone. In their place were the home decorations I had helped Chloe pick out just a few days ago. Back then, I had naively thought she was redecorating her own apartment. I had eagerly helped her choose items, never realizing they were meant to replace mine. Behind me, Chloe walked up, her expression timid and fragile. Sebastian told you, right? My hands and feet get so cold at night. I really needed this room.
Before I could answer, she panicked.
Oh, are you mad? If you don't want to switch, that's fine. We can swap back. I mean, the other room is freezing and damp, but I can survive. Clutching her slightly rounded stomach, she reached out to grab some of her things. Sebastian immediately caught her hand. Don't touch anything. But, Sebastian, Summer looks so. Summer can sleep anywhere, Sebastian snapped, cutting her off. But you're different, Chloe. The guest room is freezing. You can't sleep in there. She couldn't sleep in there, but I could. Had he completely forgotten? 3 years ago, when his mistress pushed me into that freezing lake, I developed severe pneumonia. Ever since then, my joints throbbed with excruciating pain whenever it rained. Chloe kept offering to move back, pretending to be sweet, until Sebastian finally lost his patience. He grabbed my arm and dragged me to the hallway. Didn't we already talk about this? Why are you being so difficult? She's pregnant. Can't you just yield to her for once? When I didn't immediately nod, his grip tightened. His fingers dug so hard into my wrist that they left deep red marks. I gasped in pain. He let go quickly, gritting his teeth. I didn't want to hurt you, but you need to start behaving. It felt as though an invisible hand was strangling me. I stood there, struggling to breathe, before finally whispering, "Fine." Chloe beamed and ran forward to hug me. I instinctively took a step back, avoiding her. Her face fell, looking deeply hurt. "Summer, do you really hate me that much? I never did anything to hurt you. You forgave those other 2 women who actually harmed you. Why can't you forgive me? Am I really worse than 2 strangers in your heart?" Staring at her wide, innocent eyes, the rage I had suppressed for years finally erupted. She knew. She knew exactly how much I had suffered over the years. She knew about the sleepless nights, the days I couldn't eat, the deep self-doubt, and the depression. I had trusted her more than anyone. I had poured my heart out to her. And now, she had the audacity to ask why I couldn't forgive her. She was even more repulsive than Sebastian. "Can you stop acting for 1 second? I spat. The moment the words left my mouth, a brutal kick struck the back of my knee. I collapsed to the floor, my kneecap slamming hard against the hardwood. The skin broke, and blood began to seep through my jeans. Sebastian stood over me like a towering giant, shielding Chloe behind him. "I told you to watch your mouth," he growled. "Have you forgotten everything I've said to you? Do this again, and the consequences won't be this gentle." The pain in my knee was nothing compared to the agony in my chest. It felt as though a heavy hammer was shattering my heart, leaving a gaping, bleeding wound. It took me a long time to drag myself up by holding onto the wall. I hobbled toward the door. Sebastian suddenly ran out after me. He threw a dry towel over my wet shoulders, looking almost apologetic, as if he had just realized what he'd done. "I reacted too harshly just now," he muttered. "But your attitude today was unacceptable." He then pulled out a medical folder. "Chloe has her prenatal checkup tomorrow. You've been pregnant before, so you know the drill. Go with her and help her through it." So, my past experience with pregnancy was only useful to help his mistress. The sheer absurdity made me want to scream. But then I remembered my own abortion appointment tomorrow. It was at the exact same hospital. "Fine," I agreed quietly. The next morning, the moment we arrived at the hospital, one of Chloe's friends, Tiffany, cornered us. She looked at me with pure disgust. "So, you're the pathetic leech. Chloe is pregnant, and you're still clinging to Sebastian? How shameless can you get? I heard Sebastian cheated on you twice, and you still took him back. God, you must have zero self-respect. If I were you, I would have jumped off a building years ago." Tiffany sneered. "Honestly, Sebastian is a genius. He hired the ugliest actresses just to make sure Chloe wouldn't get jealous. Talk about true love and sacrifice. You need to wake up, Summer. Sebastian only loves Chloe. You're just a toy he keeps in the corner. He plays with you when he's bored, and throws you aside when he's done." She had purposely chosen the crowded lobby to make her scene. Dozens of bystanders stopped to stare and whisper. Even some of the nurses recognized Chloe. "Oh, I know that girl. Mr. Vance has brought her here for checkups several times. But who is the other one? Is she the mistress? Doesn't sound like it. Well, even if she isn't, she must be pathetic. Imagine staying with a man who publicly cheats on you. Right? How embarrassing. Ha ha ha." The whispers echoed in my ears, sounding exactly like the cruel thoughts that kept me awake every night. The old scars on my wrists began to throb. I wanted to run, but Chloe held tightly onto my arm, refusing to let me go. It was a never-ending nightmare. By the time she finally let go, I was completely numb. I followed her into the ultrasound room like a ghost. The results came back. Chloe was pregnant with triplets. When Sebastian got the news, he abandoned his board meeting and rushed to the hospital. He swept Chloe into his arms and spun her around. I'm going to be a father. A father of triplets. Chloe, you're my angel. My parents want to meet you. We'll go to the Vance estate tomorrow. I couldn't stand to hear any more. I walked out into the corridor, only to overhear two of Sebastian's bodyguards talking nearby. So the Vance family is finally accepting Miss Miller? I thought she came from a no-name family. Well, Sebastian literally knelt in the pouring rain for 3 days outside the estate and went on a hunger strike. What choice did his parents have? They had to give in. But didn't Sebastian hate his family? He swore he'd never go back. Love makes people do crazy things, man. Now he goes back to the estate every week just to secure Miss Miller's place in the family. Sebastian had been brought back to the wealthy Vance family when he was 22. No one knew how much he despised his parents more than I did. Yet, for Chloe, he was willing to swallow his pride to get their approval. If the family accepts Miss Miller, what about Miss Summer? Who cares? She has no legal status anyway. It's embarrassing. Besides, Miss Miller and Sebastian already registered their marriage a long time ago. Registered their marriage? What did that mean? I wanted to step out and demand answers, but the guards walked away. The words felt like 1,000 knives stabbing into my stomach. I rushed back to our house and tore through the drawers to find the 2 marriage certificates Sebastian and I had signed years ago. I pulled up the official state registry portal on my phone and compared them. They were fake. The registration numbers didn't exist. Just like his excuse that his family would never accept me, our marriage was a total lie. And I had believed him for 3 whole years. The photo on the fake certificate of Sebastian and me smiling side by side was the spark that finally blew up the volcano inside me. I drove back to the house, walked right up to Sebastian, who was carefully feeding Chloe soup, and threw the fake certificates right at his face. What is the meaning of this? I demanded, my voice shaking. He picked up the papers, but instead of looking at me, he smirked at Chloe. I told you she wouldn't figure it out for 3 years.
You lost the bet, babe.
Remember our wager? Chloe blushed, tapping his shoulder playfully. Stop it, Sebastian. I'm pregnant. Well, pregnant women are supposed to be more sensitive, aren't they? Their playful flirting made me feel like the ultimate fool. I snapped. I lunged forward and slapped their hands away. I barely used any force. But Chloe immediately fell backward onto the floor. Within seconds, bright red blood began to pool beneath her dress. Sebastian's eyes turned bloodshot. What did you do? Doctor. Get a doctor, he screamed. Chloe was rushed into the emergency room. Sebastian grabbed my arm so hard I felt my bone cracking. Did I not tell you to never touch her? I told you to take it out on me. I want to tell him that I barely touched her, that she had thrown herself down. But seeing the absolute hatred in his eyes, I just laughed. Yeah, I did it. So what? What was he going to do? Break my legs this time? His gaze swept over me, freezing cold.
Fine.
Since you confessed, I don't need to waste any more words.
Guard.
Lock her in a private ward. I want her to experience 1,000 times the pain Chloe is feeling right now. I was dragged into a locked room and strapped to a bed. Several strange tubes and wires were connected to my body. Sebastian leaned over and stroked my hair like a venomous snake. Don't worry, Summer. It'll only last for 3 days. I'll come collect you in 3 days. He didn't break my legs. He didn't even leave a single scratch on my body. Instead, they hooked me up to an illegal nerve pain simulator. The machine sent waves of excruciating contractions through my abdomen, mimicking the worst stages of labor pain. For 3 days, I drifted in and out of consciousness. Through the heavy door, I could hear voices outside. Sebastian, aren't you afraid you'll push her too far? What if she leaves? Leave? Where would she go? She's been with me since she was 18. I had all her first. Who else would ever want her? As long as she begs for forgiveness and stops bothering Chloe, I'll still keep her around. I don't know how long it took, but the pain finally stopped and the tubes were ripped from my body. I tried to sit up, but my hand brushed against something wet and sticky on the bedsheets. It was dark, dried blood. My baby was gone. It had been aborted by the sheer trauma of the pain simulator. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Without a single tear, I got up and walked out of the hospital straight to the airport. I threw my phone into a trash can at the terminal. The last message that popped up on the screen was from Sebastian. The wedding is tomorrow. If you aren't dead, drag yourself over here. The next day, at the beautiful outdoor garden wedding, Sebastian kept glancing at the empty seat in the front row. An inexplicable sense of unease began to creep into his chest. Suddenly, his phone rang. "Hello, Mr. Vance? This is the clinic." Miss Summer Vance had scheduled an abortion, but she missed her appointment. We had a slot open up today and wanted to check if she was still coming. While Sebastian stood frozen under the white floral arch, his phone pressed to his ear and his face draining of color, I was looking out the window of an Airbus A350, watching the city of my torment shrink into a harmless grid of lights below. I didn't need to be there to know the exact moment his world began to splinter. I could picture it perfectly. The scent of fresh lilies in the air, the soft chatter of his wealthy family's friends, and Chloe standing beside him in the custom-made lace wedding dress that was meant for me. And then, the voice on the other end of the line, shattering the illusion. "Hello, Mr. Vance? This is the clinic." Miss Summer Vance had scheduled an abortion, but she missed her appointment. A dull, hollow ache throbbed in my lower abdomen. I reached down, my hand resting over the empty space where a heartbeat should have been. The medical tape on the inside of my elbow was still peeling, a stark reminder of the 4 lines that had pumped fluids into me after my body finally gave up. There was no baby anymore. There was no wedding. There was only the vast, silent sky stretching out before me. The exposure therapy Sebastian and Chloe had so carefully designed to desensitize me had finally succeeded. But they had miscalculated the result. It hadn't made me a submissive, quiet sheep who would willingly share a husband and sleep in a freezing guest room. It had simply killed every single cell in my body that was capable of loving Sebastian Vance. According to the reports I received weeks later from Mr. Ward, the sharp, older attorney I had hired with my secret savings before boarding that plane, the wedding did not finish. When the clinic worker mentioned the word abortion, Sebastian's mind had stalled. He had stared at the phone, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper.
What did you say?
"What abortion?" Miss Summer Vance, the receptionist had repeated, sounding confused. She booked a surgical abortion last week. She was 6 weeks pregnant, but she never showed up for her appointment yesterday. We wanted to confirm if she still wanted to reschedule, or if she... Sebastian didn't let her finish. He dropped the phone. It clattered against the stone path, the screen cracking. Chloe, sensing the sudden shift in his demeanor, had reached out to touch his arm. "Sebastian? What's wrong? Is it the business? The board meeting?" He didn't look at her. His eyes were wide, fixed on the empty seat in the front row. The seat he had arrogantly expected me to crawl into, bruised and broken, just to watch them exchange vows. "You've been pregnant before, so you know the drill. Go with her, and help her through it." His own words must have echoed in his ears, a sickening poison. "Where is Summer?" he had muttered, his voice barely audible. "What?" Chloe's sweet smile faltered. "Sebastian, the priest is waiting. We're in the middle of... Where's she?" He roared, suddenly grabbing Chloe's shoulders. The violence in his movement shocked the guests. His mother gasped. His father stood up from his seat, shouting his name. But Sebastian was deaf to them. He lunged toward his assistant, who was standing near the entrance. "Find her. Track her phone."
Now.
"Sir, we tried," the assistant stammered, holding up a tablet. "Her phone's GPS went offline yesterday afternoon. The last known location was a trash receptacle near Terminal 2 at the international airport." The color left Sebastian's face entirely. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the floral decorations. He didn't wait for the ceremony to conclude. He didn't care about his parents' furious shouts or Chloe's desperate tears as she tripped over her stolen gown, begging him to stay. He got into his car and drove like a madman to the hospital where he had locked me away. He had expected to find me there, perhaps still weak, perhaps crying but present. He had believed his own lie, that I had nowhere else to go, that because he had all my firsts, I would never dare to leave him. But when he burst into the private ward, the room was empty. The bedsheets had been stripped, but the plastic mattress underneath still bore a dark, rusty stain. My blood. Sebastian stared at the stain, his chest heaving. He demanded to see the chief of medicine, grabbing him by the collar in the hallway. "What happened to the woman in room 402? Why is she gone? Where are her discharge papers?" The doctor, trembling under the wrath of the Vance family's heir, stammered out the truth. "Mr. Vance, we didn't discharge her. She walked out on her own feet. We tried to stop her, but legally, we couldn't hold her. And about the therapy." "What about it?" Sebastian growled. "The nerve pain simulator you requested," the doctor whispered, looking down. "It simulates uterine contractions. We warned you that the physical stress would be extreme. When she began to hemorrhage, we realized she was pregnant. The physical trauma of the simulated labor induced a complete, spontaneous miscarriage. She lost the fetus right there on the bed." Sebastian's grip loosened. His hands fell to his sides. "She was pregnant," he whispered. "With my child." "Yes, Mr. Vance. Approximately 6 weeks.
We didn't know."
You told us she was just a surrogate who had failed her psychological evaluations. If we had known. Get out, Sebastian whispered. He collapsed against the sterile white wall of the corridor, his knees buckling. The man who had stood over me like a giant, telling me to behave and to watch my mouth, was now curled on the hospital floor, his head in his hands. For the first time in 10 years, Sebastian Vance wept. But there was no one left to hear him. I chose Edinburgh, Scotland. It was a city of ancient grey stone, steep hills, and constant, whispering rain. Many people would have avoided a place so wet and cold after what I had been through, but to me, the rain here felt different. It didn't feel like the suffocating, freezing lake water that had taken my first baby. It didn't feel like the storm Sebastian had pushed me out into. It felt like a shroud. It wrapped around me, keeping the rest of the world at bay, while I slowly, painstakingly piece by piece, rebuilt myself. I legally changed my name back to my maiden name, Summerlin. With the help of Mr. Ward, I severed every financial and legal tie to the city of my birth. I rented a small, top-floor apartment overlooking the dramatic cliffs of Arthur's Seat. The first 6 months were the hardest. My joints, ruined by the pneumonia from years ago, throbbed in the damp Scottish winter. Some mornings I couldn't get out of bed. I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, the phantom pain of the nerve simulator radiating through my lower abdomen. I would remember the feel of the leather straps holding my wrists down, the sound of Sebastian's laughter through the heavy door. Leave? Where would she go? She's been with me since she was 18. In those moments, I would force myself to sit up. I would drag my stiff, aching legs to the kitchen, make a cup of black tea, and sit by the window. I hired a local physical therapist named David. He was a quiet, middle-aged Scotsman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. He didn't ask about the scars on my wrists or why a 26-year-old woman had the joints of an septuagenarian. He simply worked with me, day after day, helping me rebuild the strength in my knees. Pain is just information, lass, he told me once, gently stretching my leg. It's your body telling you where you've been. It doesn't have to tell you where you're going. I held on to those words. Slowly, the physical pain began to fade. And as it did, my mind began to clear. I bought canvases, paints, and sketchbooks. I had given up my dream of being an interior designer because Sebastian had wanted a housewife who was always available at his beck and call. Now, with no one to please, I painted. I painted the gray sky, the dark green hills, and the sharp, jagged edges of the cliffs. My work was dark, raw, and heavy with emotion, but it was honest. A year after arriving in Edinburgh, a local gallery owner noticed my work in a small coffee shop. She offered to host a small exhibition for me. For the first time in my life, I was being recognized for who I was, not as Mrs. Vance, and certainly not as the pathetic leech Sebastian's friends had sneered at. I was Summer, just Summer. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the house of cards Sebastian had built was violently collapsing. Mr. Ward kept me updated via encrypted emails. I had told him I didn't want to know, but he insisted that knowing the enemy's ruin was a necessary part of legal safety. After discovering my miscarriage, Sebastian's grief had rapidly mutated into a desperate, paranoid rage. He didn't go back to Chloe. He stayed in his office for 3 days, drinking heavily before he finally returned to the house. He didn't find Chloe eating potato chips on the sofa this time. She was waiting for him in the master bedroom, still wearing her wedding veil, her face swollen from crying. "Sebastian, please," she sobbed, throwing her arms around his waist. "Summer did this on purpose. She knew she was pregnant, and she kept it from you just to ruin our wedding. She's evil, Sebastian. She wanted to destroy us." Sebastian didn't move. He looked down at her, his eyes cold and hollow. "The doctor said the miscarriage was caused by the nerve simulator," he said, his voice flat. "The simulator I ordered because you said she needed to be desensitized." "But she did," Chloe argued desperately, her voice rising. "She forgave those other women. Why couldn't she forgive me? I'm her best friend. I did it for her." "How did she forgive them, Chloe?" Sebastian cut her off, his voice dangerously quiet. Chloe froze. "The first one," Sebastian said, stepping closer. "The actress who pushed her into the lake. You told me it was an accident. You said Summer was being dramatic. But I looked at the police report from 3 years ago, the one you convinced me to pay to lock away. The witness statements say the woman pushed her repeatedly, screaming that she was a barren waste. Sebastian, she was just playing her part. And the second one," he continued, his voice rising, a tremor of pure fury vibrating through it. "The one who sent the photos to her parents. My mother-in-law had a heart attack and died alone in her living room. You told me it was a tragic coincidence. But I hired a private investigator yesterday, Chloe. A real one, not the ones you recommended." He threw a thick manila folder at her feet. Papers and photographs scattered across the hardwood floor. "They weren't strippers," Sebastian roared, his face turning red. They weren't actresses I hired. You hired them. You paid them through a shell company registered in your cousin's name. You found them. You instructed them to torture Summer, and then you came to me, pretending to be the sweet, worried friend who wanted to help her get over it. Chloe's face went entirely white. She sank to her knees, staring at the financial records scattered around her. You wanted her dead, Sebastian whispered, the realization finally settling deep into his bones. You didn't want her desensitized. You wanted her to kill herself, so you could take her place.
And I
helped you. I locked her in that room. I killed my own child because I believed your sweet, innocent lies. Sebastian, no. I love you. I did it because I loved you. Chloe screamed, grabbing his trousers. We have the triplets. Think of our babies. They need a father. Sebastian looked at her with pure disgust. There are no triplets, he said. He pulled out a medical report from his pocket and threw it at her. I had the hospital run a full panel on your blood while you were recovering from your miscarriage. Your HCG levels are completely normal. You were never pregnant, Chloe. You used fake blood, and you bribed a low-level ultrasound technician to print a fake report. Chloe's jaw dropped. The fragile, timid act she had maintained for years finally shattered, leaving behind the ugly, desperate face of a fraud. You're a monster, Sebastian whispered. He didn't call the police immediately. Instead, he stripped her of everything. He took the keys to the apartment he had bought her, froze the bank accounts he had set up for her, and had his security guards throw her out onto the street in her wedding dress, without a single penny. Chloe's ball was spectacular. When she tried to sue him for breach of contract and emotional distress, Mr. Ward and Sebastian's legal team countersued her for fraud, extortion, and conspiracy to commit grievous bodily harm. Her reputation was utterly destroyed. Her friends, including Tiffany, the girl who had sneered at me in the hospital lobby, quickly distanced themselves, terrified of being dragged into the lawsuit. Chloe went from being the pampered, protected angel of the Vance family's heir to a social pariah, facing potential jail time and drowning in legal debt. But Sebastian's victory was hollow, because the moment he cleared the weeds from his life, he realized he had cut down the only flower that had ever truly bloomed for him. My exhibition in Edinburgh was a success. The gallery was filled with people on a rainy Tuesday evening. The soft murmur of polite conversation, the clinking of wine glasses, and the warm, golden lighting made the space feel incredibly safe. I stood near the back, wearing a simple, elegant black turtleneck and trousers. My hair was cut short, framing my face in a way that made me look older, sharper, and far more confident than the broken girl who had fled a year and a half ago. You look beautiful, Summer, David, my physical therapist, said, walking up to me with a glass of sparkling water. He had brought his wife, a lovely woman who had spent the last hour praising my paintings. Thank you, David, I said, smiling genuinely. For everything. I couldn't have stood here tonight without you. Don't give me the credit. You did the hard work, he said, patting my shoulder before moving to join his wife. I took a sip of my water, looking at my centerpiece painting. It was a large canvas depicting a lone figure standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out into a vast, dark sea. The colors were dark blues and grays, but at the very horizon, there was a tiny, almost imperceptible sliver of gold. I called it the first day after storm. It's breathtaking. The voice was soft, raspy, and completely out of place in this quiet Scottish gallery. My heart did not leap. My blood did not run cold. The sudden surge of adrenaline I used to feel whenever he spoke, the fear, the desperate need to please him, was entirely absent. I slowly turned around. Sebastian stood a few feet away. He looked terrible. The sharp, arrogant, impeccably groomed man who had once pushed me out of his luxury car into the rain was gone. He had lost weight. His expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. His hair was untidy, and there were dark, heavy circles under his bloodshot eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept a full night in 18 months. He stared at me as if I were a ghost. Summer, he whispered, his voice cracking. He took a step forward, his hands trembling. It's really you. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at him. Mr. Vance, I said, my tone polite, formal, and entirely dead. I didn't know you patronized art galleries in Scotland. My coldness seemed to strike him like a physical blow. He flinched, his eyes filling with tears. Summer, please don't call me that, he begged, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. I've been looking for you. I've spent every single day looking for you. I hired dozens of investigators. I only found out about this gallery yesterday. Why were you looking for me? I asked, tilting my head slightly. I wanted to apologize, he sobbed, not caring that a few gallery patrons were beginning to glance our way. I know what Chloe did. I know everything. I threw her out, Summer.
She's gone.
She's ruined. I filed charges against her.
I
made sure she will never hurt anyone again. He took another step closer, reaching out a hand as if to touch my shoulder. And I know about the baby, he choked out, the tears finally spilling over his cheeks. Our baby. I killed him, Summer. I did that to you. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. I'll do anything. I'll give you the wedding you wanted. I'll buy you the dress. The original one, I still have it. I kept it in a glass case. Please, just come home with me. I looked at his outstretched hand. I remembered the teenage boy who had fought local thugs for me, getting stabbed in the back just to protect me. I remembered the boy who had slipped a plastic soda tab onto my ring finger and promised me the world. For years, I had stayed with the monster Sebastian had become because I was mourning the boy he used to be. But looking at him now, I realized something incredibly freeing. The boy was dead. He had died the moment he let his wealth and his arrogance consume him. And the man standing before me now was not the boy. He was just a pathetic, lonely stranger trying to claw back a past he had willingly destroyed. I took a slow step backward, easily avoiding his reach. I am home, Sebastian, I said quietly, gesturing to the gallery, to the rainy streets of Edinburgh outside, to the life I had built with my own hands. No, this isn't home, he pleaded, his voice cracking. This is a cold, lonely place. You're alone here, Summer. Come back to the city. I'll build you a house. I'll give you everything you ever wanted. I have everything I want, I replied. I looked him straight in the eyes. I have my peace. I have my health. And most importantly, I don't have you. Summer, please. He suddenly fell to his knees on the polished floor of the gallery. The patron stopped talking. Several people gasped. David immediately stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Sebastian, ready to intervene. But I raised a hand, signaling David to wait. Sebastian knelt there, his forehead resting against the cold floor, his shoulders shaking with violent sobs. It was the exact pose he had assumed years ago when he had begged me to take him back. Back then, my heart had melted. I had knelt beside him, crying, promising him that we would get through anything together. Today, I felt nothing but a mild, distant pity. Get up, Sebastian, I said, my voice empty of anger, empty of hatred. You're making a scene. I won't get up until you forgive me, he wept. Please, Summer, just say you forgive me.
Give me one more chance.
Just one. I do forgive you, I said. He looked up, a sudden, pathetic spark of hope lighting up his tear-stained face. Really? You forgive me? Yes, I said softly. I forgive you for the strippers. I forgive you for Chloe. I forgive you for the lake, for my mother, and for the baby. His eyes widened, and he began to scramble to his feet, a frantic smile breaking through his tears. Oh God, Summer, thank you. But you misunderstand, I interrupted, my voice as cold and clear as the Scottish rain. I forgive you because I no longer care. Forgiveness isn't about letting you back into my life, Sebastian. It's about releasing myself from the burden of hating you. The hope in his eyes shattered. You are nothing to me now, I continued, speaking the absolute, undeniable truth. You are not my husband. You are not my friend. You are not even an enemy. You are just a stranger who once did terrible things to me and whom I have successfully survived. Summer, no, please, he whispered, his hands trembling at his sides. If you truly want to make amends, I said, looking down at him one last time, then leave. And never let me see your face again. He stared at me, searching my face for any sign of hesitation, any flicker of the girl who used to worship the ground he walked on. But he found nothing. My eyes were like two pools of still, deep water. There was no anger to exploit, no lingering love to manipulate, and no pain left for him to soothe. He had wanted to desensitize me, and he had. He had made me completely immune to him. Sebastian slowly stood up. He looked around the gallery, seeing the disgust and pity in the eyes of the onlookers. He looked at my painting, at the lone figure standing on the cliff, looking toward the sliver of gold on the horizon. He finally realized that he was no longer a part of my story. He was just a dark chapter in a book I had already closed. Without another word, his shoulders slumped, and he turned around. He walked out of the gallery, his footsteps heavy and slow, disappearing into the gray Edinburgh mist. I watched him go. I felt a sudden, light sensation in my chest, as if a heavy iron band that had been wrapped around my ribs for 10 years had finally snapped and fallen away. I took a deep, clean breath. Are you all right, Summer? David asked, walking up to me, his hand resting supportively on my shoulder. I turned to him, and for the first time in years, a smile reached my eyes, bright, warm, and entirely whole. I'm perfect, I said. I turned back to my painting, took a sip of my sparkling water, and welcomed the rest of my life.